I'm Mandy Charman. This is for the recording now. Senior Manager here at the Centre for Excellence in Child and Family Welfare, and I work with Open. I've had the pleasure of working with this group of wonderful people for some years. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land we're meeting on today and pay my respects to Elders past and present. I extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island people here with us and online. First Nations communities, a model of collective care, accountability and child-centred decision-making for tens of thousands of years, and their traditions continue to guide the work we're all part of. So today we're delighted to host this session on child-centred practice after fatal family violence in partnership with Melbourne University Homicide in the Home Research Group and the Family Homicide Peer Support Network. The Centre, through Open, has been working with the team for some years to support the sharing of their important insights with practitioners such as yourselves. This work builds awareness of children impacted by fatal family violence and provides practical resources for practitioners. The loss of a parent has a profound lifelong impact. Yet too often these children are not well recognised and fall through the gaps. This work is about shifting that. We're delighted to bring you this next step on their journey to inform practice for real change. This event is the first event run as part of the Family Violence, Sexual Violence Knowledge Project with our three peak partners, Sexual Assault Services Victoria, No to Violence and Safe and Equal. The Cross Peaks Partnership Project has collaborated to produce an online family violence, sexual violence knowledge hub to provide on-tap resources to our joint workforces, all who are working to support children, young people and families who are or have experienced family and sexual violence. This is the first of 4 events in this series over the coming months, so please stay tuned for what's next. The topic we're discussing today is deeply sensitive. Check in with yourselves and how you're feeling. If now isn't the right time to tune in, there will be time later on. Please take care of yourselves throughout the session. Thank you again for being part of this important conversation. Today's session includes the launch and a guided tour of the Children Impacted by Fatal Family Violence Spotlight page. A short break for food and moving around at 2:15, followed by an introduction to the children's storybook, What Allie Needs Now. Following the reading, we will have time for questions with our panellists and also to ask you some questions, because this isn't just about sharing resources, it's also about testing and strengthening them. The team is really interested in your reflections, what resonates, what could be improved, and how these resources can better support your work in practice. So welcome to our panellists. Now I'm going to hand over to Hannah Morris and Dr. Kati Marin. I had it down.
Marinkovic Chavez.
Yes, a beautiful actor to introduce themselves and our other lovely panellists today. I'll hand up to you.
Thank you, Mandy, and thank you all for attending online and in person here today. It's such an incredible event to be part of, and I'm really happy that we're here today doing this. So my name's Hannah Maurice. I'm a research fellow at the School of Population and Global Health at the University of Melbourne, and just want to acknowledge the rest of our amazing UniMelb team. Their names are up on the presentation here, and obviously Kati sitting next to me. I also wanted to acknowledge I'm sitting here talking to you today on the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respects to elders past and present. And the university sits across lots of different First Nations land groups, so acknowledging that as well. And again, just reiterating, I suppose, we really want you to practice self-care after this session today, noting that the presentation addresses the topic of domestic violence and fatal family homicide. We won't be showing any graphic images, but we will be talking about trauma and grief. And so just to let you know to take your own self-care practices that work for you. And as Mandy noted, there are some supports we'll provide as well. So this project started out many, many years ago, thanks to Professor Ava Elisic and others, thinking about the loss of a parent due to fatal family homicide has profound and lifelong impacts on the children and young people left behind. All aspects of their life are disrupted. So from their mental and physical health, as well as their learning and social connections. but nobody was really researching it, particularly in Australia. As far as we are still aware, we're the only research group in Australia to actually look at this issue and to speak to people with lived experience on this issue. As of today, the number of children impacted by this is still unknown. So we don't actually have any central agency collecting the data on how many people, how many children and young people go through this. And, you know, that seems like one of our biggest challenges, actually. So as a research team, we couldn't even capture, you know, we couldn't, you know, recruitment, for example, was quite tricky to start with because we didn't actually have a database or any knowledge on who we were actually trying to target. So as I said, these children experience the most extreme form of family violence, yet they remain largely invisible in data, invisible in policy, and invisible in the service systems. We have two kind of major research projects happening. The first was funded by the Australian Research Council and lasted 3 years. And the purpose of that research was to understand the experience of children and young people bereaved by homicide, fatal family violence. And from that, we had a series of findings that really showed us that there were a huge amount of gaps. These children were falling through the cracks and they weren't receiving adequate support. So from that, we now have the NHMRC funded 5-year research project that really looks at that next view, which is to improve outcomes for children and young people who've experienced fatal family violence. At the core of our research and what we do in our team is that we hear from people with lived experience and we allow them to tell their stories. And so there wasn't, you know, a really structured hypothesis, and there wasn't any sort of really overarching, we want to look at these particular data points. We actually wanted people to tell their own story and for us to listen to that and to hear their experiences to be able to shape what our research findings was saying. Our first research project, we did qualitative interviews with people with lived experience who was a child at the time of the fatal family violence event. We also spoke to anyone supporting that child, so whether or not it was the foster care family or grandparents, as well as professionals supporting the child as well. And we actually have a kind of mirrored study happening in the University of Edinburgh. So they're doing the same research. And we are able to combine that data. Our research demonstrated these sort of main 6 findings. One was that lifelong experiences of that children and young people, experience lifelong experiences of stigma and silencing. We found across the board there's an absence of child-centred approaches to supporting that child in the family court system, in the education system, in the child protection system. You know, there was a really big lack of child-centred approaches in the policing system, for example, in the media. We also saw the importance of peer support models for psychological support and connection. So we found this finding, but actually it still doesn't uniformly exist in Australia. So we know the value of the peer support models, but we also found there's a big gap and it currently doesn't, you know, uniformly exist in Australia. We found that there was a deep impact and a lasting effect on their home life, with support for caregivers being incredibly ad hoc and rare. We found that there was only partially realised potential for trauma-informed care within the school context. So some schools are doing incredibly well and there's some amazing models out there, but it's not across the board and it's not uniform. So it was, you know, what we heard from our participants was really these one-off ad hoc stories of where people had supported them really well, but across the board, more in general, that wasn't really the case. And finally, we found there is an absolute lack in Australia of a tailored and coordinated and evidence-based support service for children and young people bereaved by fatal family violence. So even to date in Australia, across the board, there is no tailored support service. They get lumped in to different services that are not adequate to their needs. From there, our UniMelb team has sort of got the 4 main focuses here on the board. So we look at developing resources that are informed by that are child-centred and informed by people with lived experience that practitioners and carers can use, as well as people with lived experience. We do some advocacy and look to inform policy. So there's a lot of activity sort of on that space, trying to make a difference here. So like I said, we don't have transparent data on this issue, and that's one of our key advocacy asks at the moment. We have development trying to create Australia's first peer support network for children and young people experiencing this issue, as well as adults. And then finally, we have a team, some of them are here in the audience, looking at creating an international repository of evidence so that we can share from international colleagues. And that is work that we can keep you up to date with as it develops. And now that leads us to the official launch of our Spotlight page. So we got involved with the Centre for hosting one of our events 3 years ago, and from there have just had a really amazing partnership and a really supportive, collaborative kind of approach. The Centre are experts in translating evidence for practitioners, and we had the evidence. So it was sort of this amazing partnership that we could work together and come up with ways to try and tap into this cohort. Because, something that's very frustrating that we see a lot in public health is that you spend a lot of money doing the experiment and then creating a peer review paper or presenting in a conference, but does it actually reach the people who need it the most, and does it reach the community? So Mandy and her team at Open have been instrumental in helping us get the evidence out there. And one of the ways in doing that is to create this Spotlight page. Well, it's a series of pages really. So an online platform that really houses all of the evidence that our team and various teams, people from across the world as well who've contributed to our research. We will now be kind of giving you a bit of a tour of this online platform, and we're going to involve weaving in people's lived experience perspectives on this tour. So I'm going to start by asking Ashton to speak about Ashton's story, and then also how that fits into the Spotlight page and some of the resources.
Thanks so much, Hannah, and thanks for joining us, everyone. It's wonderful to be here and to share our experiences. I was thinking as we were talking, I've been trying for about 35 years now to try and sum up my story in 4 minutes or less, and I haven't had any luck as yet. So if you've got any tips, please do let me know. But I do want to start by saying my earliest memories of experiencing domestic and family violence were as a 4 and 5-year-old, seeing my mother dragged down the driveway by her hair. Because my father had come home and believed that there was someone else in the house, or that she had a new friend, or that she had left the house that day without his permission. That violence ultimately culminated in my mother being doused in petrol and set alight, and my father leaving her to die as a result of 99% burns to her body. And since that day, I've certainly realised that the death of a parent as a result of domestic homicide doesn't just mean the loss of a human being. It means a lifelong journey of navigating changes, navigating the space that you have to engage with as a human being, and all of those nuances that come with that. And hence my involvement in this research and this space with this wonderful team here, because this research gives a voice to those that would otherwise be invisible, and really shines a light on the journey of hope that can be born out of domestic homicide, if given the light to do that. So just wanted to take a moment to thank everyone for the work that we have done together collectively in this space. For my brother and I, who was 6 at the time when my mother was murdered, we became instant orphans, I guess. And as I said earlier, the death of a parent doesn't just mean the death of your mother or my mother in this instance. What it meant for us was a whole change of identity. We had to learn how to fit in with foster parents, for example. We had to navigate the court system We had to attend the trial and give evidence against our father through that period. So really challenging to navigate when you experience foster care for the first time, you've lost your family home, and you're also managing or grappling with the trauma and grief of the loss of our mum at the time. And there wasn't a great deal of support services available for us. We were immediately taken into foster care. Services at the time decided that it was best that Grant and I be separated, my brother Grant and I be separated, and that he would be sent to Melbourne as a result of his medical care needs. We fought to stay together, and thankfully we were able to stay together as a result of an organisation that I'm really proud to be involved in now, the Elana Madeline Foundation. But had it not been for that advocacy of that foundation, we would have been separated. And so I'm so very grateful for that support and advocacy in that space. But it does make me wonder, what was it about that organisation that we can capture and take forward into the journey of those that have lived experience, I guess. And our research talks to that and some of that advocacy work that is there. I forget what else I was going to say, I'm sorry. To be honest, but I'm also running out of time. I think one of the things that this research has helped me to realise is that you do have to navigate and be curious about the nuances in your own life where trauma shows up. Recently, I like to tell these stories, but it's all just insights that have come as a result of research. Recently, I started getting a really large collection of suitcases, and I had no idea why I kept buying these suitcases over and over. And so my cupboards were just full and overflowing with these suitcases, and it was never the right one. And then I've thankfully engaged in variable therapy over the last kind of 10 years or so. And I went to my therapist and said, look, can't get spending money on suitcases, plus I'm running out of room and no one on Marketplace wants to actually buy them anymore. Must be a 1 star. So she said, what was it like for you when you were 15? And when that Department of Human Services car, that red Ford Falcon that showed up with the red government plates, showed up at 3 Hawkins Street, your house, and took you away. I said, I didn't have a backpack that was big enough to take all of my belongings. And so what is happening for me right now, or was until I stopped it and processed it, I was trying to find the right bag to take my belongings. But what you often don't get is an understanding of that. And that's come with 10 years of hard work. The system provides 10 sessions of paid counselling. You don't get to understand why your cupboard is overflowing with suitcases in 10 sessions. So it marks as a really powerful understanding of the nuances that occur throughout life and how they show up continuously through adulthood for us. I still haven't found a suitcase that's perfect. I don't think I ever will. My journey continues, but I certainly am keeping Samsonite in. I will leave it there and pass on to Cassie. Thank you.
You, Ashton. And I just wanted to add a little note that, of course, it is impossible for us as qualitative researchers to really synthesize all the stories that have been shared with us through all those interviews and that work we've done together. But if you go to the Spotlight section on our research findings, you will find our best attempt. We've got some articles focusing on children's experiences after fatal family homicide in terms of their sense of identity and their mental health over the years, their experiences with education, the support that schools can provide, some incredible insights by Hannah. Apologies, let's share something working. Some incredible insights on how all these topics relate to children's rights and how we can improve our systems to ensure those rights. Also, the imposed silence, taboos, and narratives that often contribute to make children's lives a lot more difficult. And you will find all those on our section summarizing our research findings. And we do also have some research on the experiences of the practitioners who are doing an amazing work, obviously often going beyond their roles to support children and families. There's a lot to say also about how difficult it can be for them and the types of support that they also require. So we also have some findings about that.
Perfect. Yeah. So you can see on the screen here, scrolling down, we've linked all of the research papers as well as our major reports. So easily accessible to get that. And here you go, an example of it will link you straight to the open access paper for you, if that's of use for you and your team. Thank you, Ashton, and thank you, Patty. We're now going to pass to Catherine.
Hi everyone, my name is Catherine Joy. I've been part of the Melbourne Uni research team for over 6 years now, I think, so a long time right from the beginning, really. And one of the first things that I was involved in was a resource that we ended up making called Listen, which you will see on the screen in a moment. And it's a reflective practice kind of resource. And we actually made it, it was probably about 6 years ago now that the interviews were part of, there's my face, from 10 years ago. So it's interesting to actually look at it now and see it through my eyes like a decade later. But I think what I found important in this experience, because when I look at it, it felt really raw to tell those stories. And I also feel like I was a bit kind of dissociated. And I say that with like love for myself and all the ways that we used our strategies to tell a story that is unbearably painful. So I don't think that's a bad thing. It's just interesting to think about that experience of being interviewed in this initial project, which was also part of being interviewed for a documentary that I did that ended up coming out 2024. But yeah, I think that looking back and seeing that and how it was for me at a time when I'd rarely spoken about my experience at all outside of the therapy room, and to see how careful I was being too, and also just how at times, completely overwhelmed I felt, but at the same time that it felt so important to tell this story at the time. And a decade ago, nobody was talking about this publicly. This was not a conversation that was happening. I had never met anybody who had gone through this before at that point. The first person I met was Amani, a dear friend of mine, Amani, and then I interviewed Beth. And so they were the first people I ever met who had experienced this. So yeah, it's interesting to look back at that time. And I think that this resource there's a part of me that kind of finds it really hard to look at. But I think these resources are really important because it captures a time and a place and a kind of experience. And it shows that also that at different points in our life, we're speaking about different things at different times and we're going through different experiences. But like what I see when I listen to this is someone who really wanted to get my story out there and really wanted to emphasize the lack of the resource is called Listen, so not being listened to as a child, and not being kind of engaged with in a way where it felt safe to talk about my experiences, and being given a lot of misinformation, and just generally feeling like my whole childhood was filled with a lot of silence, and I wasn't really consulted on anything. My brothers and I were all split up, unfortunately, and ended up going back to live with my father, who had killed my mother. And so none of us, my brothers or I, at any point during this time, during my childhood, were kind of spoken to about that, asked questions about how we were going, what we wanted. And so, yeah, I think that this resource captures a moment in my life where it felt so important to tell those stories that I wasn't able to tell as a child and wasn't asked. So yeah.
Perfect. Perfect, thank you. And yeah, as Catherine noted, this resource is available on the website. There's actually a series of different videos that you click on and listen to Catherine speaking about the sort of different themes that come up in the research. So it was intended to be used as a reflective practice resource for practitioners. And back in 2023 or 4, we did a bit of a roadshow to different of this resource to try and engage with practitioners on it. And now it's just there for people to access for free whenever it's needed. So thank you. And Catherine's very humble. Catherine's involved both as peer, supporting as a person with lived experience and part of the peer group, but also as a University of Melbourne researcher. So we have the incredible pleasure of having this kind of dual input, which really just makes our project so much more meaningful and so much more real. Now we're going to move on to Bev and talk a little bit about some other resources that are featured on the Spotlight page.
Hi all, can you hear me? Yep, we're on. Fantastic. I was just looking at that picture and thinking that 3 years ago, we were so nervous to tell our story, and my goodness, have we come so far since then, and what a blessing in disguise it actually was. My name's Beverly. I wear many hats in my life. Mum, wife, social worker, but also really proud to say an advocate in this space. I was 11 in 1991, and I witnessed my father murder my mother. He shot her in our backyard, and I was witness to that. That was 35 years ago, we're coming on to now. And, as you mentioned before, Ashton, not a day kind of goes by where something you think that you believe you've dealt with, or you believed you've managed to keep intact in your life, rears its ugly head and reminds you, yes, that's happened. Yes, this isn't part of us. This is the unfortunate reality that we're living. One of the things that I recall about this whole experience was meeting many of these awesome people on the stage here. Through the research, where we got an opportunity to meet others, and I think my response to you, Catherine, when you said, would you be interested in meeting others in your situation? I was like, oh my goodness, there's others, there's more of us. Oh my goodness. And that, I think, really opened up these opportunities and these discussions that we weren't really able to have any other way. And one of the common themes that came from, one of the many themes that came out, was this feeling really helpless and really voiceless and unheard and very disempowered. And as Catherine had mentioned, there was no opportunity, there was no platform. So we kind of took our own action and said, we're gonna make this happen. People are gonna have to listen to us. If we say they're gonna listen, they're gonna have to listen. And we were very thankful enough to team up with Mandy, who facilitated that initial session, and a panel event called, oh my goodness, what was it called? You should ask that. That's what it was called. And because there wasn't many places where not only can you speak about this individually, but as a group, I think the power of that panel really drove the further advocacy that we were able to do for the first time in a very, very, very long time. We were to sit in a space that was often seen as really heavy and not really wanting to be discussed. But it became more and more paramount for us to be able to be heard in this space. And often we talk about, you know, family violence being a spectrum, and what we know is that there is a spectrum, but unfortunately the aftermath and the death of someone is overlooked, and often we're not seen. So we wanted to make sure that we were seen within the spectrum of family violence, but also in our own right. The panel event was really to share our experiences from a child's lens and highlight the emotional, the physical, the social impact on children and young people, not only at the death of the parent, but at the aftermath and the years afterwards. We were, yes, you know, we were very, very lucky to have Mandy facilitate our first event, and with the success of the first event, we have continued to work alongside Mandy and Open, who've always championed our cause and supported us to be able to have a platform to be able to discuss these really, really hard topics. So we did follow-up events the following year. This time we weren't as scared as the first, and we were a bit more targeted. We really wanted to speak to stakeholders in the family violence space, governments, government services, NGOs, big bodies, and really, really, really focus on what is missing and what the gaps are in services, and also the lack of appropriate supports and what we could do to close that gap. In a hint of irony, I think this whole experience has been really liberating and healing. I think we were talking about it before. We thought we were healed, and then we all met each other and realised, Jesus, we've got a bit more work to do. A lot more healing to go. But it's also been a blessing because of that. And I think also it started giving, or me personally, a sense of where I wanted advocacy to go and what it would look like, but also to make it beneficial and impactful. I think also we've now been able to have other platforms, you know, TV this morning, you know, media, radio, podcasts, print, in all different variations, where we can tell our story in a way that is owned by our experiences and shaped by our experiences, and making a situation which is pretty horrific and channeling it into something that is constructive and is going to have lasting impacts around other young people and children who unfortunately are going to still experience fatal family violence.
Thank you. And then you will see, you can access these events as resources on this website. So you can access the video recordings of it. And we actually heard from these You Can't Ask That and You Should Ask That events. We actually heard the Minister for Men's Behaviour Change, Tim Richardson, wanted to meet with us because he'd watched that video. And so Tanya and I had a Zoom meeting with him just to talk about what some of these issues were. So it did have an impact in terms of reaching some of the highest decision makers on the issue. I also heard my sister works in Department of Education, and it was sent out as a PD to all staff. So, you know, huge win for us as a team, and that really wouldn't have happened unless we had partnerships with the centre, who had such amazing reach to different stakeholders in the sector. So we were just now going to speak a little bit about the blog series that we've got up on the Spotlight series. So Beck was somebody who joined us and as a person with lived experience, but not as a child when it happened. So as an adult, but really found the research team because they were looking for someone to connect in with, just to talk about what had happened and, you know, had this happened to anybody else. And so sort of from that, you know, yes, we had our research peer-reviewed research papers, but you know, we know that probably most people don't spend the time reading those in detail. And so one of the things we did as a team and led by Ava sitting here, was to kind of translate our research findings into blog articles that are much easier to read. And we co-wrote those blog articles with people with lived experience. So Beck and I, because Beck is a lawyer, Beck and I wrote an article on the sort of issues with child, and actually Alicia, who's in the audience here too, we wrote an article highlighting what some of the issues are in the child court, in the family court and children's court sort of systems, really highlighting the lack of child participation in some of those arenas. And sort of asking that question of how can we do it better, and what sort of frameworks do we need to be creating to ensure that children and young people are listened to. And we heard from our research, our people with lived experience through the research, that routinely their experience of the court was not child-centred, that they weren't supported to speak about what they wanted and speak about what sort of living arrangements or contact with the perpetrator they wanted to have, access to belongings. And, usually it's just, and it still kind of is the case, we've got a system that doesn't ask children to speak. It's a system that's designed for adults and for adults, yet makes really, really impactful decisions about those children's life. So that's ongoing work that we're doing as a research team, but some of the beginnings of that can be found in the blog series, and there's other blogs, articles highlighting different findings from the research. So not just the child rights aspect, but life at home and identity and things like that. I'll now hand over to Tanya to talk a little bit more about your story and your involvement, particularly in the advocacy work.
Thank you. So my name's Tanya. I am turning 36 this weekend, and this year is the 24th anniversary of my dad's death, and it's just really wild how fast time goes, even though, it just seemed like it happened not a very short time ago. So my story is more on the mental health side, particularly with my mum being the perpetrator. So my story, we're a bit more of an outlier in comparison to, majority statistics. I first noticed there was something wrong in the family when I saw mum holding up a knife to my dad's throat when I was 7 years old. And I went to school just really out of sorts and thinking this is not right. And it just gradually deteriorated. The family unit, mum left, and her mental health got worse and declined as she got older. And as I started to become older and more aware of her behaviour, things like telling me that someone was putting sleeping powder in the air conditioning unit, someone was breaking into her apartment, and leaving finger marks on the mirror. The police knew her by name in the city. So I'm from New South Wales in the Sydney CBD. The Sydney police were very well aware of her. So, one day I got pulled out of class because we found out, and it was splashed all over the news, that mum had stabbed my father multiple times on the Gore Hill Freeway in Lane Cove. And that was the first time we had learned about mum having schizophrenic disorder. I was pulled out of school very hastily. We were shipped over to the police station and we were waiting there for what seemed like forever. And so that kind of became my journey into the court system, the family court system, the mental health tribunal, and just over 10 years of back and forth through the court system, and really getting that first-hand experience of what supports for children were like, and the lack of supports that were there for myself and my family. We had 20 hours of counselling that was assigned to us. We did have some supports through the Families Victim Support Service Scheme in New South Wales, but in 2002, mental health was not a conversation. It was not something that we spoke about. It was not something that schools spoke to children about either. So I was growing up in a much faster way than the rest of the kids, and I just became isolated and that, you know, that weird kid that didn't have a dad. And I lost my mum that day as well. And 10 years later, she suicided. So not only did I lose my dad to domestic homicide, I was also, you know, missing a mum through suicide. So that kind of started me on this journey of healing. And there were a lot of ups and downs. You know, as some kids do, we turn to drugs and alcohol to numb the feelings that we have to try and feel normal. And, you know, that was not going to be sustainable. So, you know, after many years of intense therapy and working through it, you know, I came across a study which my cousin actually sent to me, and we were talking about it just before this session today. And it was just really funny how it all kind of came about. And I thought, oh, I'm in this really amazing place now. And the study popped up, and this, you know, has just now become the next 5 years of my life and being able to connect with this amazing group of people. And what has really kind of stood out now is that even still to this day, there are still this really fragmented system of supports. And especially for New South Wales, you know, you've got hotlines like 1-800-RESPECT, you've got the Victim Services Support Scheme, but that is not adequate supports for, you know, many people who are going through this. And so, you know, I'm also here representing a group, a grassroots group from Western Sydney who we've all connected through the same similar unfortunate circumstances. So families changing the world for better. So shout out to Kylie and Tabitha, who've been really instrumental in trying to speak to MPs. We've been talking to local and state MPs about the work that we've been doing. We've collaborated with Full Stop Australia to also help with that advocacy messages. And we're hoping that, you know, with this Storybook launch and then also the platform, you know, it's only going to help improve things for children who are also going through the same situations and make it better for them in future.
Thank you. And you can see here Tanya in her work there. So in New South Wales Parliament, with the Parliamentary Friends Group of ending domestic violence against women and children.
Yeah.
And then also presenting at the International Conference for Childhood Trauma in 2024. And yeah, a part of the work that we do that's not so much visible on the Spotlight page is a really concerted effort to engage with decision makers across the state government and federal governments to try and change some of these systemic issues. You'll see flavours of it in the Spotlight page. So you'll see we're calling out for governments to collect the data. We're also calling out that there needs to be a child rights approach to any of this support. And so we're calling on the sector to engage in children's rights frameworks. So shout out to our team at 54 Reasons who have provided some really beautiful resources in that space, and we're working really closely with them to try and actually get that up and running in our country. And so that continues to work. And as you're witnessing here today, the most compelling way to talk about this issue is to get people with lived experience to tell their story. There's just absolutely nothing else like it. So anytime we do go to engage with MPs and whoever, we invite our lived experience peer support group. And as you can see, they're incredibly good at advocating for themselves now. And it's just been, you know, a really great partnership and collaboration between all of us. And we won't stop. We've still got a lot of fight in us. Okay, and finally, we're getting Paige to talk about your story. So, thank you. Can everybody hear me? Fantastic. You'll regret that because I talk a lot. So, my name's Paige. I was 4 years old when my mum convinced a man that was 10 years younger than her that she worked with to murder my father by convincing him that my father was abusive towards myself and my sister and my mother. And there was a few people involved and a couple of attempts, and eventually these two men did actually murder my father at the bequest of my mother. Yeah, my sister was a bit older
and had a different dad. So growing up, we had very different experiences. Again, like most of us, we got split up. And I spent most of my childhood convinced that my mum didn't do it. And so it was a big tug of war game basically between families of did she, didn't she, she did, she didn't. And as a kid, we are biologically programmed to want our mum, right? So it was a very difficult thing growing up because I fully believed that she hadn't done it. But then there was jigsaw puzzle pieces that said she did. And I was like, I don't want to look at them because I'm going to pretend everything's peachy in a world that's upside down. So it was very tumultuous. Visiting a prison nearly every weekend or getting to a point where I'd get dropped off at the gates of the prison. As a little kid, I would walk in with my library card and go, I'm here to see my mum. And then to a point where it was a DHS worker picking me up from school and I would change out of my uniform into normal clothes, go visit mum, come back, get changed so that my dad's family could pretend that everything was all good and I was just at school. To then growing up and reaching out to a few more people because I wanted answers. Like I said, I had this big jigsaw puzzle with some pieces and pieces that didn't fit and trying to put it all together. It was a task. And to be honest, I still have not put that puzzle together. So I eventually realized that I was dealing with a narcissist in my mother. And then also, unfortunately, in my uncle who predominantly raised me, who I'm very grateful for taking me in. He obviously had his own demons to battle as well. It was a very traumatic thing for a lot of people involved because I didn't just lose my dad. Me and my sister lost our home. We lost our belongings. We lost any sense of family, stability, biological need. My dad's family lost their son, their brother, and the ripple effect of that, even talking to my cousins years later, I had one of them the other day say, not the other day, a while ago, was like, oh, did you know that we were a little bit emotionally neglected? It was a struggle, right? We spent the last, what year are we in, 2026, 26 years, all just trying to get through the day and be as normal as possible because no one talks about it. Everyone kicks it under the rug. We don't acknowledge it. We definitely don't discuss our feelings around it. And just to see the ripple effect years and years on and how far that effect has just kept going. It's really difficult to see because growing up I was like, oh, my life sucks and I'm a victim and things are really hard. But as again, years of therapy and my 10 sessions a year, which was not enough to unpack anything. You've got to be really careful to not re-traumatize yourself. That's something that's been the biggest learning curve for me. So being able to spend the last, I don't know how long we've spent putting this book together, has been really, really good in the sense that it's brought me together with people that have had similar experiences and very different at the same time, but it's healing a part of me that I genuinely put in the box of that will never heal. And even just getting a copy of this today and having it in my hands, it's like a little safety net. Like I was saying to you earlier, we grew up being looked at like little victims and it was poor you, poor you. And now we get to do something where people are like, you're really cool. Look at what you're doing. So to be able to have this platform and all you guys, people online to come and be here for our book, for the website and everything else that we are doing. I can't even keep up. You guys inspire me all so much. So I'm just glad to be a part of it. And if you guys can get your hands on the book, I would. It is amazing. All of it. It is made with love. It is made with trauma. It is made with healing. Just emotionally prepare yourself to read the book. It's not something you can just pick up willy-nilly and have a read. It comes with a message and it comes with love and support. So I'm just so grateful that you guys all want to be a part of all of our work as well. So thank you.
Paige, I just wanna add to what you said that yes, please stick around for the book reading. It has been a transformative experience for all of us to be part of the creation of that book. And yeah, just to add that a lot of our work is about opening those spaces for people to tell their stories in their own terms. And that is a big gap we found in how children, after it happens, because you're not supposed to talk about it, they are refused spaces to make sense of themselves, of what happened, to separate their identity from that homicide that's eclipsing their lives. So this is not just the only story that we want to make, obviously. And yeah, just before we go into some snacks,
available on
Yeah.
the Spotlight
I
page.
want to let you know that after you listen to the reading of the book, I hope you really want to get a copy. So you will be able to access a free ebook version through the Spotlight page. And we're also preparing to have printed copies.
Thank you. And finally, before we go to a break, Catherine, just going to speak a little bit about the peer support group.
Thank you. The Family Homicide Peer Network, which I guess has been developing slowly over many, many years now. And it's sort of an informal network, but I guess the hope is that we can grow into a network that has some funding and where we can actually, put some events on and have a support group, because there aren't any support groups for this cohort of people, children or adults, which is still astonishing to me, I think. And so I guess all of us and Beck at the back and a number of other caregivers and people with living experience of being bereaved by fatal family violence we're just sort of like a growing group of people who are starting to do more events and advocacy, and I'm just about to start an online monthly kind of meetup. So anyone who wants to show up that has lived experience, going to be facilitating just a monthly informal group, I suppose, to start. And also just wanted to say we're using the term fatal family violence to make sure that we include any kind of death in the context of family violence. So that could be a suicide, it could be a death that is just not recognised in the courts as a murder, for example, a missing person case. So we really want to make sure that there's a space for people who have, I think, historically not had spaces for them. Obviously want to acknowledge that all of us and most of the people involved currently have been bereaved by domestic homicide, but I really hope that the network can be a space for many people who have lost a family member, any family member in the context of family violence, because there is just not enough support. So we have some places on the Spotlight page which show a bunch of the work and advocacy that we've done together. And there are, so many people not here today that have been involved.
I saw an online question, how can you access the group? There's a link that you can click on and it will email the family, fatal family violence homicide peer group. Thank you. That's the sort of end of the first session. Okay, and we're going to have a little break and then come back to the read. Thank you.
Welcome back. We're now moving on to our second session, the introduction to the Beetle Project and a reading of what Ali needs now. We'll explore ideas from the reading in a panel discussion, and then we'll have an opportunity to take some question and answers. I'm going to hand over now to Katie and
so much, Mandy. Thank you once more for joining us. I couldn't be more excited about today's reading of What Ali Needs Now. And I want to give a special thanks to our both practitioner contributors, Jackie and Heather, to everybody who was part from the Union team and for the peer group who was very generous in sharing your stories and your wisdoms to including this book. And also very special thanks to Andrea Baldwin, who is the children's author, who distilled all these stories, and also to Won Yuen, who is the illustrator who brought all these characters to life, including our lovely Beetle here that represents the strength of the children who survive fatal family violence, but also the big weight that they also carry on their shoulders. And I just want to take a quick minute to give you a little bit of background on where does this storybook come from. It comes from the Beetle Project. The Beetle Project, which stands for Creating Empathy, Empowerment, Tales, Listening, and Expression. It symbolizes our line of work on making those spaces for people to share their stories in their own terms, with the goal of, number one, assuring children that they're not alone. There are other Beatles out there who are there advocating for them, and also to share all the skills, wisdom that only somebody who has similar experience can share. So our aim is to create a society that is more caring and more supportive towards children and people who are burned by fatal family violence, and to do that through the power of storytelling. And next slide. And this is what we want to challenge. We want to challenge those toxic narratives that so many people have had to deal with, that set them apart from others in an isolating way, that talk about the past, the present, and the futures are something that is very negative, stigmatizing, or just erasing the complexity of those stories, not acknowledging children as victims in their own rights of this type of violence, or sometimes narratives that sound quite benevolent at the start, but that are actually quite debilitating, like us not being ready to hear from children when they're not doing well. We just want to hear happy stories with happy endings. And also that kind of imposition that I think everybody who's lost someone has felt it, that in our current society, we are expected to grieve within a very small period of time and then basically to be over it. In contrast with that, what we are building, what we're trying to build here is a culture where children do not feel alone in their experiences of adversity, where we acknowledge and empower children in them also knowing about, their own wisdoms, the incredible skills that they have, that they have to teach and share to contribute to others' lives as well, and the complexities, but also, the beauty that is in the process of grieving that makes us more human and allows us to remember and become stronger in coming together. And finally, obviously, the imperative that we need to listen to children when we are making decisions that will shape their lives for years to come. Next slide. And actually, we have two books today. The focus is What Ali Needs Now, which is our book for children. But we also have A Life After Intimate Partner Homicide, which is our first collection of biographic stories directly taken from our interviews. And also to the left, you can see one of Ashton's suitcases, which is one of the many. And both books are meant to be freely available to everybody online. We also want to support anybody who wants to access printed copies as well, because we know how important it is also to have that object of the book as well. These are just some teasers. Next slide, please, from our first book, Life After Intimate Partner Homicide. But now we are ready to meet Ali. Ali's here to thank everybody for coming here and also to introduce their friends from the peer support group. Next slide. All these characters were created by Andrea and Abby Tumong, based on the rich stories that everybody shared. And you will see, some little hints of where you can see the different personalities across the book. And I'm going to hand over now to Catherine, who is going to lead us on a very important dedication to start the reading.
Thank you. Okay, so something that our peer group like to do or started to do at the beginning of a session, I suppose any kind of session like this, is a small kind of dedication ritual to offer a bit of a container for this space, including online. It's a dedication in honor of our lost loved ones. We want to say their names and bring them into the space as well. We've intentionally placed ourselves in order of how old we were when we experienced the loss of our parent that was killed, to illustrate or to remind everyone, I suppose, that this can happen at any age, including adulthood, that the loss of a parent or parents in this way is devastating at any age, and that supports that are needed at any age and throughout our lives. Just wanted to note, because we spoke about the data and not knowing how many children, from a very informal count over the last 5 years I've been doing, it's about an average of 70 children who lose a mother to domestic violence, homicide every single year in this country. And that's just from counting what's in the news and in the media and using some of the amazing work of Sherelle Moody and others who have done counts of women who were killed. So that's an underestimation. And it also doesn't take into account those children who lose a parent to suicide in the context of family violence, or children who lose other family members as well. What we do know, though, even though we don't have that accurate data, is that these children's lives are changed irrevocably, that our lives were changed irrevocably. So I'm just going to start our little dedication. My mother's name was Carolyn Joy. She was 32 years old when she was killed by my father, and I was 3 months old.
Microphone, please. I was 4, he was 39, and his name was Paul. I was 11, and my mother Betty was 29. I was 12, and my dad was 50.
For my mum, Viola, murdered by my father at the age of 48. She would be 73 years old today. I will never stop loving you, even when I no longer know how.
My mother was Marilyn, and she was 70 when she was killed by her partner, or soon to be ex-partner. And I was 42, and she was a grandmother of 3 very young children. And if she was still here today, she'd be 79, so it's 9 years this year.
That's fine. We can click our news. Just a very quick note before we start reading as well. We have a script, and there is a link for the online version that people can look through. And our script is slightly different just because I wanted to kind of divvy up the lines a bit more, and also just to align with some of the pronouns are a bit different to align with our own experiences, but it's pretty much the same version as the book. It's just slightly altered.
Hi, I'm Ali, and I'm a rhino beetle. We are the strongest beetles in the world. We can lift 850 times our own body weight. That's the same as a human lifting 4 double-decker buses full of passengers. We rhino beetles can speak up for ourselves. We can protect ourselves. We can do things we want to do, and we can have fun. I didn't always feel this strong. When I was younger, something happened in my family. Some people tried to help. I wanted help, but I didn't know how to talk about what happened.
There's a group of people who might understand what you're going through.
Hello, Ellie. My name is Charlie.
I'm Deb.
I'm Tori.
I'm Jay.
We all loved someone who was killed or died in a way that seemed hard to talk about. Our mother, our father, a sibling, or someone else in our family. For me, it was a long time ago.
For me, it was just last year.
We're writing a book about everything that we've learned.
We want to help other children understand what they need and how to ask for it. What I needed most were facts. I wanted to know the true story of what had happened. Who did what and why. I was trying to make sense of what happened so I could live with that story in my mind. Some people don't want to talk about it at all. Some told me a vague, basic version, like I was a baby. People on one side of my family told one story, and people on the other side said that that was all wrong.
I needed people to ask what I wanted and listen when I told them. People told me where I had to live and what I had to do. I didn't get a say about anything. After a while, when I wasn't feeling sad the whole time, I wanted to do what other kids were doing, like hanging out with friends and playing sport. But no one listened to what I wanted.
I had so many feelings. It was really confusing. People kept saying I had to be brave. I kind of wanted them to see how sad I felt. Part of me wanted to tell them that I felt angry, hurt, and betrayed. But those feelings were so huge. Maybe if I started to let my feelings out, it would break me. Maybe it would break someone else. I didn't want to seem like I was making this all about me. Anyway, didn't know where to start.
It can help to think about putting one foot in front of the other, taking one step at a time. What do you want your next step to be, Ali? What do you need right now?
I thought about that. In my heart, I knew what I needed most at that moment. I want to bring my sibling Sam here. They've lived in a different place from me and we never get to see each other. They'd love to meet you all.
You have a right to see your sibling, and they have a right to see you. Which adult can you ask about this? Who can arrange it?
The Beatles helped me think about what I needed to ask and what I needed to say. And guess what? It worked.
Good job, Ali.
It's great to meet you, Sam.
We settled down to hear how the book was going.
For me, the story of what happened was like a jigsaw puzzle where you can just put the pieces together. Everyone told me different things, and not everything would fit. As time went by, it got easier to leave the puzzle alone and do other things with my day. Now I have an idea of what I think happened. I might never know the exact truth, but I feel like I understand enough to live with it.
That didn't make sense to me. How can you be okay with what happened?
I didn't say I'm okay with it. It shouldn't have happened, but it's one of many things that shouldn't have happened in my life.
See this marble? It seems to take up almost all of the jar, doesn't it?
This marble is the same size as the other one. Why doesn't it take up as much space?
Because the jar is bigger.
What happened to you is like the marble. It will always be a part of you. But your life is like the jar, getting bigger as you learn and change and grow. In time, there will be so much more in your life, and it will be easier to live with the marble.
Don't think Sam understood about the marble in the jar. But suddenly there were tears running down their face. I'm here, Sam. You're safe. I love you. I'm here. I felt helpless. All I could do was hold Sam while they cried.
It's okay to feel sad, Sam.
It's totally okay to cry.
You won't always feel this way. It gets better, I promise.
I felt really sad too. The thing that helped most was finding ways to show that the person who died was special. I wrote a letter to tell her how much I missed her.
I made a photo album to remember the good times we had together. And some of my family helped me plant a garden for him.
There's a candle in our house that we keep lit just for her.
I like to play his favorite song on my guitar. Sometimes I talk to her out loud. And sometimes just in my head. It feels like she can hear me.
I jumped up, my heart pounding in my chest. I couldn't catch my breath. Felt my face getting hot. I don't want to talk about this right now. I ran out. But my friends came to find me. I'm sorry I got mad, but I don't feel ready to do all these things that you're talking about.
I understand. What I was saying wasn't what you needed at that moment. I'm glad you could tell me in words that you didn't want to talk about it.
Sometimes it's hard to put things into words. Those big feelings can be so overwhelming.
It can help if you find other ways to let them out so they're not boiling around inside you.
Jay gave me a piece of paper with a circle drawn on it.
This is a mandala. The circle stands for you. You can choose colours for all your different feelings. Then colour in the mandala to show what you're feeling at that moment.
Say you choose blue to mean sad, and you're feeling mostly sad, then you might make most of the circle blue. But there's room for all the other colours too.
There was one question I really needed to ask. I felt so scared of the answer, but I took a deep breath and I asked anyway. Why do I feel like people look at me and see someone bad? Like what happened was somehow my fault, or I might hurt someone else. Am I a weirdo?
You're not a weirdo. Something very hard has happened in your life that most kids never have to go through.
You're a person, just like everyone else.
And going through tough stuff, well, with help from other people, can make you strong.
Very strong.
I guess you're wondering if the Beatles ever finished their book. Yes,
Yes, we did.
That was amazing. So powerful and covering so much practical information in a digestible way. Doesn't really do justice, does it, everyone?
Palatable is our favourite word.
Just letting everyone register that. Breathe. We're now got a bit of time to have a bit of a discussion and some questions and answers. And I suppose I wanted to start off just with how is everyone feeling?
Mandy, I'm happy just to add to what we were talking about in relation to the peer network. One of the things that's really become apparent to me over the years is the enormous sense of shame that you feel for not being able to rescue the person that was killed, for not being able to be there or from stop the incident from occurring. And one of the things that the peer network does, as well as this research, is it really shines a light on that shame. It forces you to take ownership of it. And I think it's only through that shared experience of shame, of coming together and sharing our stories with that lived experience, that we've learnt to kind of begin to heal from that shame and to carry that shame with us. So I just kind of wanted to start with that as a point of the importance of the peer network and this particular research in really shining a light on that shame. And I know that many people struggle with that sense of shame after an incident that they've experienced. So for me, that's one of the most powerful things that's occurred. And I know in your practice, no doubt you'll be dealing with some of the outcomes of that shame.
And
the impacts.
and to add to that, also to there is lots of silence within families. There is lots of not sure what is the best way forward, always with good intentions, but not often with those results. I reflect on my own family, and we still have lots of my cousins who are in their 30s now asking questions because they didn't have the opportunity to ask beforehand. And if I ask you, are you going to be upset with me? But it's important to know that it's not just my story. This impacts everyone. Siblings of those who've passed, siblings of the perpetrator, their children. It's not one, it's a collective.
And I guess just to add in terms of the experience of making this book together, for me at least, I think it almost felt like a corrective emotional experience, because it was like all of these things that I think most of us didn't actually get. We didn't have someone sitting down with us and explaining things. We didn't have someone, necessarily knowing how to make space for a really hard conversation. Most of us had the opposite. There was a lot of fighting, there was a lot of silence, there was a lot of fear or shame. And so I think part of what was so beautiful about coming together in these workshops to create this book was that we kind of got to, and even reading it, we got to experience that feeling of what it might be like, our little child selves, of someone actually taking the time to really sit with you and be okay with whatever feeling you're having and whatever you're experiencing. So
I think touching on that as well, a really big part of this is just for us and for anyone reading this is to know that you're not alone, because it is quite an isolating thing when any kind of family violence happens, where you lose anyone, and with shame it all intertwines. And so a lot of the time you feel like you can't talk about it because it will upset someone else, or you'll get shut down or yelled at or anything. So you do just learn to sit with it by yourself and feel like it's you against the world. And then to be a part of a study with other people that even in the initial stages of making this book, we were just talking about what life was like growing up and the light bulbs that were going off with all of us. And we're like, what do you mean you hurt like that too? So as horrible as it was really, I don't know the word, but just to know that there's other people out there that get it. Because growing up, it was just you and your thoughts and the head noise and all of that. And then to be able to actually put it together and sit with an amazing group that just gets it is something that is absolutely phenomenal. So especially for the people online, if you are somebody that has experienced this, please reach out, because I was terrified. I'd been a part of the study, and when I moved back to Victoria, I did not come to the first few things because I was too scared. And now I regret not coming to them because it has healed a part of me that I genuinely put in the box of that will never heal.
And the similarity in your experiences, given different backgrounds, places, ages, times, the specifics of the experience is sort of astounding, isn't it? And the consistent, you're almost sort of like become siblings in your own sort of right. That's how it feels talking to you, which I think is astounding. And the fact that it took all of this time to get to the point where you actually met anyone else with the same experience. Let that settle in for a minute. Like, the isolation of that.
I was talking to some of the audience, fellow peers potentially, and how language had to be toned down to make people comfortable, and only of late actually knowing what it is for what it was. Because it's again, we talk about things that are palatable. It's not palatable. People are curious and they want to know But then, like you said, Paige, it becomes a too hard basket. It's like, oh, okay. And yes, please jump in. That experience where people want to have a talk about these things until they actually hear what it was like, and then like, maybe I don't want to have a chat. But now we're too much, too much. But also then you're left with, we've resaid the story again. So also being mindful about when repeating not the story, we don't like that word doing. When we're repeating our experience, that it's for a purpose, not just to see someone's curiosity.
Just to add to the language and I guess the nomenclature around the event or it, I think it's really important for us to stop calling it and stop calling it as, oh, that thing that happened. That's like, it was a traumatic event, yes, but it's actually our experience. And just recounting on some of the times that I have been having conversations with people and having to tone down my recounting of the story because I have been told, oh, that's really intense. So it's like I have to moderate my own language to make others feel comfortable when partner violence, family violence is not a comfortable thing to sit with. So I think, and we were talking about this before, the more that we talk about it in open forums and the more that we bring it more into the mainstream, the easier it will become to talk about it and to have these really difficult conversations because that's what's needed. And what people are very scared of is, talking about hard stuff, but we really should be talking about it more.
And we had a lot of conversations, even just when we were writing the book, about making sure that we didn't dilute the language and that we used the word killed as well. And we also wanted to be inclusive of other kinds of deaths. So we added that line of, deaths that are hard to talk about. So it can absolutely be a book that is for many different kinds of children who have experienced losses. But we also wanted to be really clear that what we were talking about was someone being killed, because that was the experience that we had, and that was a word that was never used. And it's so confusing, I think, as a child to get your head around everything that's happening. And even though it's really intimidating, and anyone who has kids in their life, that's a hard conversation to have. And I suppose that's why having it in the form of something like a book that has all kinds of other parts to it that are really comforting, but not shying away from that language, right? And I think we all felt really deeply about being like, no, it needs to say that. Yeah.
Yes, there's nothing worse than, in my view, someone saying, oh, how did your mum pass away? Well, no. She didn't pass away. She was murdered, actually. Oh, yeah. So it's difficult, but it's definitely something we're quite strong about, aren't we?
Yes. So, there's a lot of practitioners here and people who are experienced in the sector, and you're really describing something that I think probably reflects how practitioners might feel their own barrier to investigating or to probing or whatever. And I suppose I was really interested in, what do you think practitioners need to remember when navigating what you're saying and bringing up these difficult topics? Because sometimes I think too, it can be just, and you've mentioned this, not wanting to further upset the person if they're not wanting to speak about it at that time. Or for me, it's often not wanting to get it wrong, and either embarrassing myself or hurting somebody else. And I'm not a practitioner though. So I suppose I'm really interested in what you would say to the practitioners here, and then maybe some in our group will have experience working around some of these conversations, and that's how you do that. Yeah. So what would you say first to those who are in the service system around this?
Always ask. How do you describe the situation? How, what do you call it? What do you name it? And go from there.
And I guess that fear around re-traumatizing, that's understandable, but as many of us have said, we've already lived through that's the worst thing. So talking about it is, obviously creating space that is a good space to talk about it, not just out anywhere. But yeah, I don't think actually having that conversation that is already happening in your mind as a kid and as an adult, and yeah, not being afraid to have that conversation and ask those questions, because I think we speak so much about the impact of those conversations on children and not the impact of not having those conversations and the consequences of that. And what we've all spoken about is that silence, and that has an enormous impact.
I think a biggest thing for me that helped in my healing journey was someone just told me it was okay. It was okay to be angry. It was okay to be sad. It was okay to make really horrible jokes about it. It was okay to write a letter and burn it. It was okay to get into hobbies that are aggressive, like field hockey and boxing, because it gets it out. But just having somebody in my corner telling me that it was okay, because I needed an adult to be like, you're allowed to be pissed off, you're allowed to be mad, you're allowed to be upset. And just making sure that throughout sessions, because even in an hour, especially if we come back to our 10 sessions, well, just checking in throughout the session as well, and just making sure that you do get the most out of those sessions. As we know, it's not enough, but just being able to help steer a conversation that it's okay, this is why we are the way we are, but how do we handle that moving forward? So it's not just reliving and re-traumatizing, it's that, okay, well, this is why, but how do we handle that moving forward in these scenarios? So just the checking in and making sure that it is a safe space. Also just telling people it's going to be okay.
It's very validating, hey? And so how did you handle it? Like, you've got lots of suggestions in the book,
Yeah.
but yeah, you've got some interesting, that's a personal question, but I thought
No,
that was
that's
really
okay.
interesting.
So I'm a little bit different to these guys. You are all amazing, and you've all gone on to work in health sectors and be in helping with legislation and all of that. And I do boxing, and I'm learning to drift a car sideways very fast. So I've been in the motorsport scene for a very long time. Mostly as media, I used to do a bit of rally racing, and now I've decided that I want to drive. So I'm going to do that. So this book and the message we're doing will eventually be on the back of my car. So stay tuned for that.
Any legislation or policy,
Yeah.
let me tell you. You're having really hard conversations with a group of people who don't often aren't subjected necessarily to these conversations too.
So yeah, that's another big thing that we want to do, is make sure we try and reach as many different audiences as we can, which is so helpful that we are all so different as well, because we have so many different types of reaches with our advocacy work. So being able to do that and have the support of all the amazing people that are supporting us makes it all possible for us to actually have our voices heard for the first time in our lives. So thank you.
Page certainly makes healthcare sound boring.
Sorry.
Drifting.
It's really important.
No, I want to. Drifting now. My job is absolutely boring. One thing that I wanted to say though is you're working with people who are in a very vulnerable space, and I know that you acknowledge that and you will realise that. But there has to be a level of shared vulnerability, and you have to acknowledge that you may not actually have all the answers. And that's actually a really important component of what my journey was. I had a lot of wonderful practitioners working with me who had all the very best of intentions, but they pretended to have the answers as well. To a puzzle that had no answers. And so I think you have to be willing to acknowledge that you may not have all of the answers or may not be able to fix everything. And that's really hard. I work in healthcare. I want to fix all of my patients all of the time. And you as practitioners no doubt want to do the same for the people that you're working with who are very vulnerable. But there's something about that shared vulnerability that really leans into a space of just being there. And I mean, Brené Brown would be really proud of me today because I've highlighted shame and vulnerability. BreneBrown.com. However, what I am going to say though is if you're in this space, I would rather hear you say, I don't really know what to say right now, but I'm here for you, other than I know how to deal with this. You know, that's just so much more appropriate. And I wish someone had have said that to me rather than trying to take it away, because it could have dealt with years of suitcases. You know, who knows what it could have avoided. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Forgot the courage bit. You've all got the courage.
Courage is coming. Being free.
Lost my trail of thought. Continue. No, that's all right.
Courage.
It was a lion in the Wizard of Oz.
Just to quickly jump in while
Go,
you're
go.
thinking, one thing that I often think happens in a situation like this that might be different to some others is the assumptions that people make about, often it's not always a parent that is the perpetrator, but it often is. And I think as a child, you can be very attached to a parent that has caused enormous harm. And sometimes the assumption that you either hate that person or that you're going to take their side, one or the other, is, I think that assumption in itself can be really harmful, because a child is really working through so many things, and it's absolutely understandable and normal for someone to still love their parent even if they've done something awful. It doesn't mean that they're then going to decide that they want to be in touch with them, or it doesn't reflect the decisions that they might make in the future. But I think just acknowledging that the feelings that people might have towards their parents, regardless of whether they've been the person who's harmed or been harmed, they're complex, and just
Yeah, and that add to the confusion.
Yeah.
Because then there is also shame around, but I still love this parent. I can talk about my own experience in that my father and I had a very, very good relationship. Probably my safe parent before, you know, he murdered my mum, and still remained in contact with him throughout his entirety of custody. I hear you when you talk about going to different jails, say, yep, we're doing that this weekend. Yep, that's what we're doing. And even when he left custody, you know, provided him a home to stay, because we knew that the reality of a man who spent 12 and a half years in prison is very, very, very likely going to have many supports around. So I think it baffles people, but I think the relationships are complicated and complex. He knew that I was not ever going to forgive him, and that was totally by choice. It frazzled others. I think particularly in my family, there was that black and white stance, and also for whatever reason, being the youngest of 8 siblings, they had him up on a pedestal. And I think I always challenged that. It's like, I can still love my father, but I can actually say what you did was absolutely not okay, and you will never get forgiveness for what you did. But that came with a lot of challenges in navigating that with other family members, who found it really difficult to see that.
Okay. Just something that I've been reflecting on as we've been talking, particularly when you're talking to children. I know from my own experience, our family unit was very much, we don't talk about mental health. We've dealt with it and we move on. So when you're navigating conversations with young people around, you know, these really complex issues, but then there's no reflection of that at home, that can make a very difficult environment, particularly when there's no open discussion around what has happened, and particularly how the rest of the family are feeling. So, you know, me as a 12-year-old, I felt quite isolated because I could talk to my therapist about everything that I'd gone through. But then when I went back home, no one was talking about anything or how they were feeling, or then how we were trying to also relate to each other. Because my auntie was also dealing with her own grief, and I was angry at her because I thought that she was playing favorites with her own kids, as opposed to, you know, trying to include me in the family. So I felt isolated because she didn't know how to talk about that, and she didn't talk about that with either her kids or myself. So there's going to be more kind of complex, extenuating family relationships that you will have to navigate if a child is either living with relatives or living in, you know, other carers or, you know, other people.
And I just want to quickly acknowledge, like, we are obviously a panel of adults speaking about children, and just speaking to children where and when possible is the most important thing. And I guess part of the difficulty in being able to, I guess, engage with children and young people on this issue is going back to this, like, we don't know where these kids are. We don't have any sense of, you know, so many children go in lots of different directions. And so even just kind of building a network with young people in it has been really difficult, and takes, you know, a lot of work as well to make sure that it's a space that's comfortable. But yeah, I guess just to acknowledge that we are speaking about children, and we are not children, clearly. We are not young people. But yeah, and then I think when possible, we really want to, and we did try in our research and we did speak to some young people, but we have a long way to go in actually engaging with young people in this particular space. I see a hand up.
Yes. So I just want to add, I so appreciate this, but I just want to add one element, and that is the layers of complexity and disadvantage of backgrounds. Like, I do appreciate that there is a mix here, but it's overwhelmingly a white Anglo setting that, like, the majority of you. And so add all of this disadvantage and then be, you know, not from an Anglo background, that's what we're doing from our whole backgrounds. There's so many layers of disadvantage and so many layers of inherent disadvantage. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes,
And yeah, very, and very, very, very true. My family was first generation migrants, never had any dealings with the police, never had, you know, trying to be law abiding citizens in Australia, being migrants, and completely turned the world upside down. So when it came to finding out where, what, why, and how to access things, it was really, 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 really tricky for them to navigate too. So yeah, I hear what you're saying. Just on another sort of another thing around safe spaces. We often talk about safe spaces. If we have been able to provide a safe space for a child or a young person to actually talk, then we've done our job. Nothing we say or do matters at that point, but if we've allowed that space, then we've done what we've needed to do. They've found the space to be able to talk. So it's very easy as adults now to jump into fix-it mode, right? We can do this, and, you know, what is the solution here? But it's also just as powerful and healing for a child and young person to know that there is a space, and that's all we are doing is just listening. Yep. Sorry.
Hi. Just a thought. So I've been listening to you all reflect on the silence in the families and how difficult it was because the other family members around you weren't able to explore the feelings, give you that safe space and that thinking. And there was a bit of isolation being able to only talk to your therapist. Has there been consideration, because this is a great book, around tools to support family members? How do they have those conversations so that we can open up that space for young people and for children to have those conversations by giving confidence to the people that can do it every day, like in the car, driving to school, all those random times when things might just come up?
Thank you for that excellent question. Cassie, would you like to? The toolkit.
Happens to have
You're
a slide. Maybe we can go to one our last slide. And yeah, we absolutely agree. What got us to this point was bringing together everyone, and everybody has unique contributions to bring to the table. And so we want to continue working with in developing those resources that they can also use in their work, also share with the families they work with. And so the invitation is for everybody to become a Beagle champion. If anybody is interested in staying connected to this project and being invited to different activities, we want to co-design, just like I said, resources to help have this conversation in different settings. Please connect to that QR code. So just a simple, short form just to register your interest and give us your permission to contact you via email. And we really want to invite everyone to think about what additional accompanying resources are needed. How do we distribute this in the best way possible, in a way that is also responsible? How do we incorporate young people into this work? Like Catherine said, we don't want to stop yet. We want to continue growing. And also any ideas that you probably haven't crossed our minds yet. So yes, the invitation is there. And hopefully next year we'll have another event to share exactly those type of resources.
I think there's lots of networks and forums already in space, particularly in the community services video space. If you leveraged hospitals for their interjecting as well, and usually I'll have social workers, and then you look at the Orange Doors, Family Services Alliances, things like that. They're all spaces that work with the family unit and family units of all descriptions. And they'd be the same. You've got the Kinship Carers Victoria, also based here. I'm trying to do that. Yeah. You know, there's those kind of alliances and those kind of peak bodies that you'd be able to leverage as well. Be my thinking.
We would always want to build capacity in any clinicians in any space that would like it. I suppose the tricky thing is how do we do that in a way that is going to be not generic. For example, I work for a hospital. The social workers there are going to have a different role to school wellbeing. Who will have a different role to child protection, different role to family violence services. So the more information that we can have, the better that we can understand what the resources are. I know we've been working in the background on it, but also how does that get distributed through heads of government? You know, if you want to implement something through education, you're the Department of Education. So again, good intentions on our end, but there are lots of barriers as well to allow us to do that. But we are working on it. We are definitely working on it.
And I guess, yeah, just to acknowledge what was said before, I think there are a lot of gaps as well, and we're continually learning. So how is a resource like this helpful in different communities? And yes, please.
I'd love to see a train the trainers. So we have key people in the community that then go out to schools and smaller groups and then do, train the hubs. I'd love a few of us to be trained, and then we go out to the schools and to the smaller hubs. That would be amazing. We can take this from every end of Australia very easily.
I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's a brilliant idea.
I think our wish list at the start of this project was having clinicians in family violence services all across to be able to build capacity, as well as our secondary consult in these spaces.
And people who know the community.
Yeah.
Like we're not in all of those communities. So
Child protection also has family violence advisors. So they're the specialist family violence child protection advisors. Their role is to give a voice to children and risk in child protection. They would make great trainers as well. So that's the state.
So funding.
Teaching the DB with module for Big Beauty. So that just came up yesterday, and we're about to have a really look at our modules. So yes, about to take that on next in 3 weeks. So yeah,
Let's chat after. Yeah. Thank you. That's a great idea.
Can I ask a question? I'm just wondering whether the book will be in languages translated.
The question to sit back. So we're so very lucky to have Ava here today, who is leading an international collaboration on how to better support children and families affected by fatal family homicide and violence. And we do have some people who are interested on teams in translating, adapting, and helping distribute the book. And we are also aware that here in Australia, we also have very different contexts and backgrounds and places. So yeah, we want to invite anyone who also wants to develop those new versions, new stories. Maybe it's going to be a completely different story. And we want to support that in a way that it's led by the community, not led by us, but all the support is there if you guys want to collaborate. So yeah, great question.
I mean, the power of the networks, can't you just see it?
Yeah.
So anyone online who has their own networks that they want to put out there as a potential opportunity, please do that. I think this has really made us, somebody asked, you know, your vision for this group going forward, and you sort of touched on a little bit here and there, but if you had your wish list in 10 years for this great years or 5 years, you know, what would you see as things that, you know, the journey that you would have taken?
Who would like to start?
Courage.
The question was what's the vision for the
network? For the peer support network.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the hope is that well, it'd be great if we can continue getting grants and things, but the hope is that it lives beyond sort of the initial Melbourne Uni sort of research project, I suppose, and becomes a network that offers support for people. I mean, I guess I see it as really wanting support groups for young people, however that looks for them, whatever is good for them. Because so much of what we've spoken about is that feeling of isolation and it being an experience that is far too common, but certainly not that common, you know. And then it's something that I would love there to be this sort of tailored support service that people can dip in and out of over their lifetime, because the support sort of is needed at different times, I think. And I suppose I just see it growing, and there may be being, I mean, I'd love just to have a support group that exists, and that's what we're hoping it would start. And from that, I guess I imagine that there would be subgroups that would exist depending on different communities' needs or different experiences that might be a little bit, you know, for example, people who have lost a family member to suicide in the context of family violence might, you know, need a separate space. So yeah, I suppose the hope is that it just continues to grow. We need funding though, like there's such a big thing. And I think I hear what you say, like there's so many ways to get these resources out and for things to happen within already existing communities. But we also, yeah, definitely need more money.
Yeah.
You go. Wish list would be to see fatal family violence as an extension of current family violence. It is really unfortunate when there is a family working with family violence services, there is a murder or death that happens and that support is cut off. Up until then, we are great at prevention, we are great for the acute, but that aftermath is where it's really, really, really lacking, and a lot of clinicians are struggling with what to do next because there isn't anything available for them to be able to refer families to, or it's very ad hoc. whoever happens to have it at home. So
Not really sure about a wish list as such, but one thing that I will say is what this research, this book, this peer group demonstrates is that when people come together with lived experience and are able to contribute meaningfully to that output, to those outputs, what it does is it demonstrates a shared connectedness. And I think that's really powerful as part of the healing journey, but also as a society, right, to integrate people with lived experience into the work and the outputs that are being produced is something that you can't put a dollar amount on or a wish list or create a wish list of part of. So that was not English, Ashton. But you know, that aside, I think that's kind of what it represents for me. And I was talking, you know, just in the break about being asked to be the token lived experience person on committees or at certain, you know, events, but to be able to integrate your work in a way that is meaningful and impactful on people moving forward is something entirely different. I think that's my wish list. Is what I hope for people with lived experience of domestic homicide. So
I think from my perspective, I work in technology, so I'm really big on data. My big pie in the sky would be seeing that national database across the country that is interconnected. There's clear pathways, the systems and structures of who to connect with at what stage. There's visibility across the system and makes it easier for families and carers to connect with clinicians, to connect with social workers, police, connect with the legal system, and really have those clear pathways of who to go to and when and at what stage, and where to find resources. So I'm in New South Wales, and it's just so difficult just to find one spot to find who to contact, or, you know, what is the best services to find a really specific piece of information. Like, there's not one space, there's about 50 different areas and different organizations that specialize in different supports. We've got Braces Place, which is a beautiful service for people who have experienced family homicide, but that only supports 20 people. That's not nearly enough for, you know, to cover the comprehensive reach of, you know, just in Sydney alone, let alone the rest of New South Wales or the country. So that kind of internet connected system will be like my goal. Yeah.
I think for myself, sorry, I just kicked you. That was so rude. Are you okay? I think for myself, obviously, to keep continuing doing the work that we are doing here. My goal is to have my drip car with what Ali needs now plastered all over the back of it, and to be able to then link people back to our resources. So I plan on getting stickers done and all of the fun things that actually gets people back to what we are doing and leading people to those resources, particularly in a community where people do not talk about their feelings. So I've already had quite some wholesome conversations with people within the community about just putting feelers out about how it would be received turning up with this big project on the back of my car, and it has been very well received. And a lot of the motorsport communities are bringing in like the brotherhoods and that sort of thing, where they have counselling on site at motorsport events, which is phenomenal to see. But I think if we can keep trying to reach out to so many different types of communities, then it helps make it more visible. Ava with her glass blowing as well, like there are so many different places and medias and all these amazing communities that all have their own little struggles. So I think for myself, it would be amazing to just be able to open up those conversations for people and show people that it's okay to have those conversations and to admit that you do need help, and here's where you find the help. So
I have a very quick thing to add on my wish list of really just there being more spaces for children to collaborate. Because I just feel like, or for anyone actually, but I think children in grief is like a space that I feel really there's still a long way to go in creating space for that to be
you know, comfortable and accessible but I mean, I guess adults need to be comfortable speaking about it. But yeah, I think something as a part of all of it, I think children free is just a big space that I'd like to do more with.
And just touching on, you know, that's not the right word. You lose a parent in such a tragic way at a young age, and you know, as we were talking about before, there are other markers that come throughout your life where you are reliving and re-experiencing the whole event. It's not just anniversaries, it is unexpected things, it's moments with your own children, just the age. Yeah, reaching the age they were, a lot of anxiety around reaching the age. Yeah, then you surpass it and you're like, okay, so this is what life looks like afterwards. And your needs change, your supports look different. And on average, when a traumatic event happens, be it sexual assault, be it a homicide, it does take a long time to process that. And so it might be a decade before someone is able to actually have a space to be able to start talking about it. But sometimes we age out. We're no longer a child, but we are still a child of.
Well, we've had some absolutely amazing comments with the online audience and lots of thanks. And just look, you're all superheroes. Let's face it, you know, like you're all taking on the good fight, and we'll expand the world for everyone else of us who is supporting someone, families getting together as well. Can you imagine that network? Or even people not in exactly this situation. A lot of what you said is a lot of resonance with me from other types of issues that my family has dealt with. And I just think you just stand up there showing us how to be braver. So thank you so much. We will ensure that those comments are shared as well. We always put out an event reflection on our work, and this, of course, will go on to your own spotlight pages as well. So we'll make sure that you have a review of that. I'm sure you would be very interested in anyone talking to you about any possible ideas or linking if they know people who could benefit from such a wonderfully supportive home to help them navigate this difficult situation. As always, this is my third time doing this, and as always, I'm sort of speechless. Thank you so much. Is there any other information that you needed, that you had wanted to put forward in that slide? Because we sort of veered off script a little bit, guys.
Well, I think for now, all that I have left to say is thanks. Thanks to our amazing team of researchers, videos, practitioners, to all of you. There's a lot of people that I want to thank who have been shown in the earlier slide this morning, but just thanking all the Peel Collective, all our team. Also, big thanks to the Australian Childhood Foundation for helping us create what Ali needs now. And just let's stay connected. You've got the links, you've got our names, and hopefully, this is the start of something new. This is a new stage. Thank you.
Also, if there are if there are people with lived and living experience of this, and if, like we said, we want to be inclusive, so if you're identifying as someone who lost a family member to family violence, very interested and would love to hear from you. And there are somewhere on the website, there is an email for our peer group if you want to get in touch. So please do.
Keep deferring and not saying anything. I'm a bit out of sorts today. I just want to say thanks all for coming, and I do recognise, and one of my big things about sort of coming and reaching out to Catherine and the research team in the initial days, because I was an adult, was because of the struggle I had with accessing anything, and that's coming from a you know, a white, largely privileged, educated person, and I was ropeable that I was struggling to find any help. And, you know, I continue to say this to this day, that people who don't speak English or from disadvantaged backgrounds are still finding it difficult. Well, it's impossible to navigate. I couldn't do it. So how are they expected to? And I keep saying this over and over. But, you know, where's the money? We need money.
We don't need the money. I just wanted to make a quick comment as well. It reminded me when you said thank you and you looked up, and I had to process for a second then, because as kids we were always looked down on, and it was always for you, like off you pop, go and sort this out, or like your life sucks, or it was always a victim thing. And being in this space and creating what we're doing, that script is flipped. And I know about you guys, but now the people in my life are like, you're really cool. Good. And to have like all these amazing people say thank you, and that we're now changing something, it's actually really empowering. So thank you for giving us the space to be able to flip the switch on our own lives and take some power back, because we lost so much of our identities as kids. So to be able to actually have a safe space to talk and have people look at us differently is actually really nice. So thank you.
I'm sure the team here really wants to be just the beginning, and I can see all of these kernels and connections already. And Caddy and the team, everyone has really lent into wanting people to provide feedback about their use of the resource, the use of the book, the use of the hub, with the view of getting practitioners more fully involved in co-development of this information. And I just think it's such a wonderful opportunity to really show our service sector how differently it can be done when everyone's voices are amplified and everyone's experiences are respected. If you could please fill out our, saying this intentionally, our survey on the event, because of course this is very important for us in order to show that these events are actually highly valued. So that really help us. But also there's an opportunity for you to provide your details if you'd like to lodge them in that way, and we'll make sure that we share them with the team and keep communicating with you about this type of work into the sort of future. Resources developed and tested together will always be stronger. You can see how the thinking just amplifies. So if we can encourage you to be involved with this lovely team, if you want more from Open, please feed that back to us, because we're always looking for what matters most to you. I also, I suppose, want to thank you as an audience. It's really hard to sit with this. You role model it so beautifully. But thank you too for being here and showing up. I've always had this experience with you guys, showing up for everyone else and yourself and each other. And it's truly unique and sort of wondrous, really, given, you know, everything that's had to happen to get. So I wanted to give you a huge thank you, and I wanted to pass you each just a little thank you.
Like a party bag.
Thank you so much. And we would love to do more, of course. And there is, so we'll wind up now, but in a true ceremonial sort of way, we'd really like to pass now to Catherine to switch off our candles. And as they do that, let's all take a moment to pause and breathe and just absorb the feelings in the room that we've all contributed to generate. And we rush off to our busy work. And thank you, Catherine, for suggesting, and the group. I don't know. It's just this, yeah.
Thank you. And thank you, Mandy, and the Open team. This has been a beautiful collaboration. Shall we? Thank you everyone for being here and for sharing space with us, and also our parents.